To learn more, visit World Wildlife Fund at wwf.earth/food waste and spread the word that food should never be trash.
Are you tired of static? Wish you could take your favorite Virginia radio stations with you wherever you go? Then you need to discover the power of streaming. That's right. You can now easily listen to the Virginia Talk Radio Network for insightful discussions and local news.
From the VTRN News Center, I'm Bill Trefiro.
And groove to classic hits on Rewind 1039.
Baby, I know you're asking me to stay.
All from your smartphone, tablet, or computer. No more fiddling with the dial. Just download your favorite radio app. Search for Virginia Talk Radio Network or Rewind 1039, and you're ready to go. Stay connected with your community.
Good morning. This is Kimberly McBroom in the WDBJ 7 Newsroom with our Virginia Talk Radio Network News Update.
And enjoy the music you love, anytime, anywhere.
Every move you make.
Streaming the Virginia Talk Radio Network and Rewind 1039. It's that easy. Virginia Talk Radio Network, Rewind 1039. Now streaming.
Former Virginia Tech coaching great Bud Foster, co-host of Foster and Friends, has always produced a winning philosophy.
What they said now doesn't mean anything. What we do now is going to make everything.
When it comes to life, the boardroom, or the football field, Bud knows there's a right way and a winning way. Listen to Foster and Friends with Bud and yours truly, Mac McDonald, on 93.3 FM Lynchburg and the VTRN Sports app.
You're listening to WVGM AM and FM Lynchburg, now powered by ESPN Radio and streaming on the VTRN Sports app.
Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your trusted dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With more selection, more value, and more finance options. Plus, your trade is worth more. Shop local and save more with straightforward pricing, plus exceptional service and selection. Your search ends at the Motor Mile. Choose from over 900 quality pre-owned vehicles, plus a massive selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, plus the used car superstore. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles at one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got more than any other dealer in the area. The Sheeler Motor Mile delivers choices. Here's the difference. Sheeler owns the finance company and makes getting approved for credit simple and easy on the Motor Mile. Flexible financing options for every budget to get you on the road fast. Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile with a certified friendly staff and no games, no gimmicks. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Is it time for a new place to call home? Moving out on your own? Perhaps your existing lease is up for renewal. Looking for a new roommate? Or maybe you just need a change of scenery. Then you need to check out brownstoneproperties.com. We have Central Virginia's largest selection of apartments, townhomes, and single-family homes. Applying is easy with our online application. Visit us online to begin your search at brownstoneproperties.com.
I take care of the kids, and I take care of my dad. I take care of things at work. The groceries, the cleanups, the meltdowns, the doctor's visits, the family events, mealtimes, bedtimes. I take care of all the things everyone else needs. But I haven't made time to take care of what I need.
Family caregivers are often overloaded. It can feel overwhelming and exhausting. It's no surprise that millions of caregivers experience symptoms of anxiety and depression every year. But help is available, because there may only be one you, but you don't have to do it alone. Head to mentalhealthcareworks.org. That's mentalhealthcareworks.org to learn how to get the support you deserve, because mental health care works when you make the call. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis or thoughts of suicide, dial 988, a message from the American Psychiatric Association Foundation.
So why is this TruthLaw.com Fast Take coming your way from an airport parking lot? It's because it's a perfect metaphor and compare and contrast for Virginia Tech basketball and Virginia basketball. Right now, Virginia Tech, women and men, it's not catastrophic toward their March Madness hopes, but it feels like they're stuck in the parking lot. They haven't really gotten going in ACC play. Meanwhile, for the Virginia Cavalier women, and especially the men, they are much closer to take off.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
The news came down last night. Actually, it came down yesterday. I guess you would call it afternoon or early evening. But it was specifically about Frank Rocco, 20 years as LCA Bulldogs head football coach. Rather quietly announcing that he's stepping away at the end of this school year, meaning basically that this past season was his last coaching the LCA Bulldogs. Kind of seems to fit his style. The timing is right. We're at the point now in the early portion of January where a lot of the high school football programs in the area, pretty much all of them, are beginning their workouts to get ready for next season. And they're not 100% full participant because in a lot of cases, while the demands are strenuous, there are some players that borrow time with different sports, baseball, basketball, wrestling, lacrosse, and then they work their way in to workouts when time happens. But if you're not involved in one of those sports or a sport in the winter or spring, then the expectation is if you play football, that you're involved in the conditioning program for football. And if you are involved in a sport, you work your way into football conditioning as your other schedule allows, which, for one, tip your cap to the high school football players because it's a very demanding schedule and it's very demanding the amount of requests and time that's just generally speaking put on them and what's expected. But that's why the timing was perfect for Frank Rocco stepping away at this time, or at least announcing it as the LCA Bulldogs football coach. You're at the point where you realize you've got to make that decision sooner or later. But, this is also the reality of understanding the job, understanding what it takes. And you put all that together, and I guess you could say you put it all into a blender, and you realize that this is largely about putting kids in the best place. Because if some programs are having these type of expectations, then essentially everybody has those type of expectations. And it's just the nature of it. The other reality is Frank Rocco got to the point where LCA had the biggest target on their back in local football. Some of that I can understand the argument that it is brought on by themselves. Let's call a spade a spade. Plenty of schools in high school football. Football is probably the biggest example, but even I would imagine it happens in other sports. To get my usher on for a moment, I don't know as much about certain sports, but I know in football and in some other sports, bigger attention, highly competitive sports, players will move based upon where they want to be played. And frankly, it happens from one public school to the next. I get the Logan Thomas family situation drew all the headlines, but part of the reason why I never found it egregious is that type of activity has taken place in so many other places and instances. I go back to my time when I was in Martinsville, Virginia, where there was the old adage that if you wanted to play basketball and lived in the county, for those watching VTRN Sports and Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook Live, and YouTube, if you lived in Henry County and you wanted to play basketball, you wanted to play for the city of Martinsville Bulldog basketball. And you would, air quotes coming here, move in or start to live, in quotes, with a relative in the city. And here's the funny thing. There wasn't a lot of consternation about it because if you wanted to play football, Bassett, more recently Magna Vista, then you would, same air quotes here, move in with somebody in the county if you lived in the city. Like, this stuff has been going on. And it's not just in that area. It's more pronounced in the 757, the Richmond area, certainly Washington, the Northern Virginia area, if you want to call it that. But I mean, there are examples here. And look, I've seen it before. I've never found an issue because I've seen players on plenty of rosters, Glass,
Rustburg, Brookville, JF. Yes, I'm calling them out as well. Liberty back in the day, Heritage, Amherst. So I got all 7 public schools plus LCA. Like, this has been going on. But the most basic thing about LCA, and people love to take shots at Frank Rocco and take shots at LCA for this, but the reality is, when you're a private school, which LCA is, there is no district from whom you're automatically assigned a pool of players. So for players to come play for you, they're going to have to make the decision, or their families are, to transfer from some type of school. If it didn't happen with all the other schools to a certain degree in the area, I'd probably be more up in arms about it. And yes, LCA is probably the bigger, flag bearer, if you will, of it, because the nature, again, of their school is you have to transfer in from somewhere, or you have to elect to not go to your school district in kindergarten and therefore go to LCA or some other private school, and then maybe you transfer to LCA. Like, the point is this has to happen. And so Frank Rocco had a bigger target on his back. And, it's easy to sit there and look at the fact that, and these are all impressive accomplishments, 20 years coaching, Frank Rocco, 19 of those years, they made the playoffs. From Visa, private school, to VHSL, public school. 19 out of 20 years. That's insane. You're not going to win a state championship every year. Like, it's not going to happen. But he won 199 games. They managed to win, 7 state championships when you blend the 2 levels together, private and public school. And yet, I would say this past year, if anything, is the bigger testament to the timing of Frank Rocco leaving and the reality of it. Because we asked them this at the Seminole District Media Day. And again, full disclosure, Frank Rocco slated to join us about 5:25 today here in the Fast Lane. But we asked him about the idea of pressure coming off of last season and being 2-time defending state champions, and how has the pressure shifted for LCA Bulldog football entering the start of this past season, which obviously no one knew would culminate with the loss in the state semifinals to Kettle Run.
A great question, and these guys can attest to the fact that we've addressed that. We've been blessed over 20 years we've won a lot of football games. So, there's a lot of games won before we had a Gideon Davidson. And although Gideon's a great player and a lot of our success could be attributed to him, we've won a lot of football games with Jaden Cowart and Austin Tremblay and guys just like them. So our anticipation is that we're going to, continue on just with that same expectation.
So what Frank Rocco, I'll kind of do the what he said and what he meant. Gideon Davidson is a once-in-a-generation type talent. But LCA has routinely had players that could get to a UVA. Obviously, Mike Rocco being part of the family, there is the lineage that helps with that. But, they've had other guys there. Rashad Jennings, Pitt and Liberty. I don't think, I know Rashad went to the NFL, but from a out of high school recruiting perspective, he was not deemed to be a top 100 recruit the way Gideon Davidson was. Austin Tremblay signed with Liberty as well. They've had a lot of those type of players at LCA. 199 wins during that 20-year run. That's remarkable for LCA. Like, if you put that into perspective, and I get playoff wins are counted into that, but a 20-win tenure and just shy of 200 wins. I'm going to do a little basic math. 200 divided by 20 equals 10. LCA football under Rocco's tenure averaged just under 10 wins a season. Now, shorter playoffs in private school, so there were fewer games on which to pull. More games in public school, you have to win 5 in the playoffs. And you get 5 twice in a row, 23 and 24. Again, that helps with those numbers. But however you spin it, if you're averaging 9 wins a season in high school football, that's remarkable for LCA. And again, I understand that Rocco is taking shots. I understand LCA just by virtue of being a private school. You can call it recruiting players. You have to bring players in from other schools, whether it starts at kindergarten or first grade or younger levels, or it starts at high school. Like, inevitably, this is going to happen. But I think the remarkable thing is not just that, but the fact that for Frank Rocco, that he stuck around and he and his coaching staff were widely regarded by, I think, a lot of people in the area, certainly those who cover high school football. It's hard for me to say they're the best coaching staff, or they were under Rocco in Virginia, because I don't know about every single coaching staff all across the Commonwealth of Virginia. But I would say top 5. Like, I think you could easily make a compelling case based on their resume, not just wins and losses, but players developed, consistency of doing it, top 5. And a lot of it is the years like this past year where you're not winning with the generational talent, you're winning with coaching acumen and X's and O's.
There might have to be a little bit greater attention to detail. Just like you said, Gideon might have been able to break a 70-yard run and he had a 2-play drive. Well, now we may have to put 10-play drives together. And that entails being a little bit crisper, a little bit more attentive to detail, possessing the ball. And so a lot of the precision parts of the game are going to have to be elite this year and being able to maintain 10 and 12 play drives.
And that's the thing about LCA. Like, ultimately, they did not have a game breaker. And when it all, pardon the expression here, but it hit the fan in the second half where they had the lead at Kettle Run and they couldn't score in the second half. And literally everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for LCA in that semifinal loss at Kettle Run. Like, first of all, inevitably, it's really hard to 2 in a row, much less 3 in a row. Like, at some point, a loss was bound to happen somewhere. And I'm not talking Ironton. But by the way, again, that's another side note about this. LCA found it harder to schedule games. In the last couple of years of Frank Rocco's tenure, they would routinely have 9 regular season games because they couldn't quite fill out their non-district schedule. It became really difficult for them. Again, when you bring in players the way they do, I get people are reluctant. When you have the success they do, I get that. But it's not just LCA. Heritage and JF have encountered that situation as well, where it's a challenge to put tough games on your schedule. LCA, JF, and Heritage are not in the spot like a lot of those Richmond schools where there's so many private schools and so many good public schools that they can all kind of play each other if they're not in the same district. You can play up, you can move around. It's harder. And you're also in Richmond, an hour and a half, 2 hours from the Virginia Beach area. It's a lot easier to justify making the trip there, an hour and a half to 2 hours to Northern Virginia, to get a lot of higher end competition. It's harder in Central Virginia, especially the idea of a home and home. So, and again, it's not just LCA. It's other schools, successful ones, that are going through that. But you put all that into a blender, and I think all of it cumulatively is why Frank Rocco had such a good run at LCA and why it should be lauded for what he did. Again, I'm not sitting there ignoring all the facts of the situation with Frank Rocco's run. But the other reality is, and I think this is the telling thing, he could have easily bailed at the end of the Gideon Davidson run and said, "What? Hard to find another generational talent. I'm going to hand it off to someone else." And then the program falters. I think it's remarkable to stick it out through this year. I'll be curious. Again, we're slated to speak with Frank Rocco in about 10 or so minutes here in the fast lane. But I'll be very curious about that because, and I've seen so many coaches before where they have a once-in-a-generation talent. And then as soon as that talent leaves, it's like the talent is a senior and the coach might as well have senioritis and be gone. And the program has to do a full reset. That's really hard. Now, who knows what kind of reset LCA will do? That's a loaded coaching staff. If there's ever a program where promoting from within might make sense, even if there's an inexperience at the head coaching position. LCA is the type of program where I think there are viable candidates, multiple ones, that are worth considering. And I'd imagine it's a pretty attractive job, although, again, we've seen it before in sports. When you have to replace the legend, it can be a real challenge versus having a step or two removed from it. But all that put together, I think it's remarkable. And I think there is a plenty of offseason, and we will have plenty of time to look at how LCA replaces Frank Rocco, what the next coach ends up doing, how the direction goes. But I think it's worth at least commending the job that Frank Rocco did because it's remarkable. Again, I get they brought some of it on themselves. I don't know what else you're supposed to do if you're a private school about obtaining talent, but I don't think we can not acknowledge that. But all that being said, he won the right way, and he could have easily done it's going to be my final year. Let's make it all about me. He waited till the season was over, let the dust settle. But as soon as the offseason begins, and basically offseason prep begins at the turn of January, that transition was made so that they have a full offseason or as close to it to get the next coaching staff in place and have the direction of their program going. And I think, TJ, again, you've been around LCA even more, having called a number of their games before. I've only called the ones against Jefferson Forest. But seeing the way they operate, it is mighty impressive.
It's mighty impressive that they have managed to stay on top of it for as long as they've had, player after player, talent after talent, and they've been consistent. You said it, Ed, 19 out of 20 years they've made the playoffs.
No doubt. I mean, they had a really good run. And if you're talking about LCA, it's worth acknowledging this. I think LCA's presence has, I wouldn't say forced Heritage to be good, because they've always been good with Brad Bradley. But I think it is dangled the carrot out there of schools in the area wanting to be that good. Jefferson Forest. I know they have not beaten LCA under JT Cruz, but clearly that was a good benchmark game routinely last year and this year of what does it take to win at a high level. And I think all of that was a key cog in JF seeing that, being in those games regularly, having to raise their level of play. And then, with all due respect to John Hanley, but that was kind of the second round monkey for JF football this year. They got better because of it. I do think it's reasonable to say the LCA presence has motivated other programs in the area to level up and put as much intensity and effort into their season preparation and demands as well.
I still believe LCA could be good, maybe not as good as under the Rocco years, and they may have a downward trend for a couple years, but I do think with Rocco leaving, there's a potential for, now you've got Heritage and JF, because I think JT Cruz can keep JF right there, even with guys like Thax Rowland leaving. I think it opens a spot for EC Glass to go up there. I think it leaves a spot for Amherst to go on the rise and Brookville in the future. But shout out to Rocco. He was always great to us at 90.9 The Light. Great interviews, great guy to talk to, knows the game, very well structured, and nothing but love and respect for him.
No, I think it's absolutely worth mentioning the role that he had and the steps that he helped take. And look, he was great to us in the media and understood. There have been times where, he could have easily, oh my gosh, I can't believe you brought up the transfer route. At no point was that ever the case. And, he's been very respectful, even when we've taken stances that you may not fully like or the way we frame it.
I'd say he's the best high school coach that knows how to talk to and pertain to the media in this area.
And I would say this, I think the majority of current high school football coaches in this area, see what I did, see what I did there. But the majority of the current high school football coaches in the area are really good at understanding the nature of the job.
JT Cruz, it's always a good time to interview.
I can't think of one where I go, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And I know we didn't have the fortune. We unfortunately weren't able to broadcast JF against Rustburg because of the numbers challenges at Rustburg later in the season. But Coach Ross had been great to us at media days. And the rest of it was the first year, so we just don't have a timeline of work for him. But the rest of the Seminole District, everybody seemed to understand that and got really good feedback. And understanding that it's about the kids as much as anything. And I think that's, if you take one thing away from a Frank Rocco and other good coaches in the area, Bradley, different style, but JT Cruz, Doug Smith, ultimately they're demanding is all get out. And it is a very heavily demanding job.
It is.
If you're going to be a high school football player, you have to treat it with a level of maturity, but it does prepare kids for a level of commitment to whatever their tasks are if they're going to be a college athlete or beyond. And I think infiltrating that mindset around here, on the one hand, I'm not big on single sport specialization forever. And a lot of coaches are reasonable about letting their athletes try other sports and be involved in them.
Absolutely.
But on the flip side, you'd rather that than playing video games all day, buried in your phone, or any of those other things. So that's it with Frank Rocco. By the way, we will get to that in a moment, but we need to blitz, pun intended, through the Fast Five at 5-ish. There are some other nuggets that we get to discuss right now.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
The NCAA Division I cabinet slated to discuss allowing sponsored jersey passes during competition, particularly football and basketball, as they will allegedly have that discussion middle of next week, January 13th through 16th in Washington, D.C. This, according to Sports Business Journal, as reputable as it gets. I mean, this is an inevitability, right? I mean, we're seeing it in the majority of sports. Baseball has it. Basketball has it. the NFL doesn't really have it. I'm sure they will at some point. I'll be honest, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen some type of jersey patch, a little VTRN logo or a little InsaneRadioDeals.com logo, which, by the way, if we want to bring it and the VHSL wants to allow it, maybe we'll do that for high school sports so that we can be, pardon the expression here, but pimping our brands all over. But alas, since that's the case, the reality is this is inevitably going to come because finding financial resources is the name of the game, and schools will bucket this if it is not allowed. Can you really see the SEC and the Big Ten saying, we're going to forfeit a source of revenue when we need as much revenue as possible, including leading into the new deal? Everything appears to be settled for now. Damon Williams, the saga of the Washington quarterback who agreed to a $4 million NIL deal, signed it, or rev share deal, and then wanted to hit the transfer portal because, shock, Mr. Helicopter, I have to just bleep up, Lane Kiffin, happened to try to persuade him to leave. Apparently, the agent representing Damon Williams and his legal team are backing off. Damon Williams is saying now he's going to stick at Washington and not go into the transfer portal. I can't help but wonder, how's this going to fly within the program? I mean, ultimately, greater talent leads to greater tolerance. I don't know if it's as big of a deal now as it would have been in prior years, but man alive, I mean, you got to wonder about the loyalty of a player and his priorities and focus in the way the program would receive him when it's clear it didn't seem like he really wanted to be there.
Can I say forever a Husky now?
Yes, you may. I love it. TJ, way to play on our theme from earlier in the week. Meanwhile,
Number 3.
NASCAR set to announce their new championship format Monday at 3:30 p.m. Can I throw a little word of caution out there to those that might like to throw shekels down on betting? And again, hey, I'm all for doing it responsibly and understanding this is an entertainment avenue. If you can't, and I think it's important to note, it's okay to put the brakes on it, to stop, to find a way to ask for help because you don't want it spiraling out of control. One example is if you're trying to make your projections for who's going to be the NASCAR champion, why wouldn't you wait until Monday afternoon and you at least know what the format is going to be? Because until you know what the format's going to be, what are we doing betting when we have no real concept yet? Now, if you get word from your frontstretch.com reporters or other experts in the area and they drop it, maybe you want to jump ahead. Again, if that's your thing, go right ahead. But I'm looking forward to this. If you ask my preference on championship formats, I would rather there be 4 races for 4 rounds of the NASCAR playoff or 4 races for 3 rounds of the NASCAR playoff. I'm fine with it. I can settle on a compromise of 5 and 5, 5 for round 1. You whittle out half the field, 5 for your championship format, or just a 10 race championship format. I'm fine with all of those. I am not in the 36 race format because if you have a runaway champion by the end of the year, you're kind of in, what are we doing here? And I like some level of drama to unfold. Meanwhile,
Number 2.
We didn't bring this up earlier this week, but Virginia went to Virginia Tech on New Year's Eve and lost in 3 overtimes. The atmosphere at that game was, I would say, good, all things considered. And the reason I bring that up is it was good and there was enough energy, but you didn't have a band playing. You didn't have a student section. The Castle Guard was non-existent during that stretch. I get that with 20 or even 18 game before this, conference schedules in college basketball, you have to play games heading into the new year and when students are not on campus. Liberty students don't go back until this upcoming week. So there were 2 weekends of Conference USA. Last weekend was at home. This weekend is on the road. I don't think there's a picture-perfect solution to this. But for conferences like the ACC, where you have clear rivalries, State and Wake Forest, because Duke and Carolina will always trump it, because Virginia and Virginia Tech are rivals, Clemson, Georgia Tech, you want to put all of them into a rivalry category, FSU, Miami. Why don't you have 2 rivalry weekends, and instead of having one of them being at the start of conference play when students aren't around, have one in February, that Saturday when the first Duke-Carolina game is, and have another rivalry weekend at the end of the regular season in March when the second Duke-Carolina game is. I get there's a North Carolina bias in the ACC, but in this case, it's okay. Let that Duke-Carolina game be the guiding timeline around which you can build your rivalry weeks, and the students will be on campus and the atmospheres will be that much better. Meanwhile, speaking of coaching announcements, it's good in the end, but Liberty announcing today that Jamie Chowell is recovering after a successful surgery for what has been termed, quote, according to a release, a serious but treatable medical condition, end quote. And he should be ready for spring practice in the spring game. Call it a blessing in disguise. Maybe they kind of knew about this because at the end of the season media availability, Jamie Chadwell mentioned they're going to go back to more of a traditional schedule for spring practice and a spring game, which actually takes place during the spring. By the way, watch it be like 40 degrees and rainy on the spring day in April when in early March, it was like 60 degrees and sunny. Watch that happen. But it's a blessing that this happens. You get to it early. In hindsight, as more info may come out and we may gather more, it might explain how this season didn't go quite the way Flames fans would have wanted. And Chadwell has done enough over his career that if he's dealing with a medical situation, I'd rather it come to light now than during the season, because I get it. Even though you can get context now about this, you don't want to put that carrot out there in the season of things are going awry and now the coach is dealing with a medical situation. Not only did the transfer portal vultures start circling even sooner and telling players to opt out and not play, but you want to send a message to your team every single year of being all in, and that's why that is necessary. Meanwhile, when we return to the Fast Lane, perhaps, hopefully, we will be able to connect with Frank Rocco, former LCA Bulldogs head football coach, to go in-depth into his decision to step away from coaching football after 20 years. That when we return here in the Fast Lane.
Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your trusted dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With more selection, more value, and more finance options. Plus, your trade is worth more. Shop local and save more with straightforward pricing, plus exceptional service and selection. Your search ends at the Motor Mile. Choose from over 900 quality pre-owned vehicles, plus a massive selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, plus the used car superstore. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles at one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got more than any other dealer in the area. The Sheeler Motor Mile delivers choices. Here's the difference. Sheeler owns the finance company and makes getting approved for credit simple and easy on the Motor Mile. Flexible financing options for every budget to get you on the road fast. Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile with a certified friendly staff and no games, no gimmicks. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
We're joined by Corey Argentino from Earthright Mid-Atlantic and Earthright Roofing. Corey, blending those two together, the ability to work with people for both their roofs and solar, how does that work?
Well, it really coincides because a lot of folks needing solar panels also need a new roof. And some people just need a new roof. And with a trusted brand like Earthright, you can't go wrong doing your roofing or your solar project or both with us.
How beneficial is it as well that when consultants come to someone's house or business, they can get consultation on both solar and roofing?
This saves a lot of time. You're not having two different people come out. You got one person. They understand both. The process is less time consuming and the project moves along a lot smoother having one team, one project working together with the other team.
Corey Argentino from Earthright Mid-Atlantic and Earthright Roofing. Corey, thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
Indeed. Come by, see the showroom on Timberlake Road in Lynchburg, and learn more at earthright.com.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
Looking for everything happening in and around Central Virginia that used to be in the morning paper? Start your day at the LynchburgPortal.com. Get the latest news updates from Bill Trevero, plus up-to-date weather from VTRN's own in-house meteorologist, Matt Ferguson. So you're always in the know before you head out the door. Want to listen on the go? Stream classic hits on Rewind 103.9. Get breaking local news on WIQO, or catch the best sports talk and play-by-play on VTRN Sports, powered by ESPN Radio, all right from the portal. Looking to save? Check out insane radio deals for great local discounts, or explore local podcasts featuring the voices and stories that make our community special. Plus, connect with local businesses through the Lynchburg Business Alliance directory and stay in the loop on the latest events from Lynchburg Tourism. It's all right here. Local news, weather, sports, deals, and more at the LynchburgPortal.com. your gateway to everything Lynchburg.
Hi, I'm Zach Mackey, the voice of Virginia Tech men's basketball. Catch the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle weekdays 5 to 6 p.m. on VTRN Sports 93.3 FM and the VTRN Sports app.
Hi, this is Bill Roth, voice of Virginia Tech football. You're listening to the Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
We are pleased to welcome you back into the Fast Lane, and we are even more excited to be able to connect with the now retired head football coach for the LCA Bulldogs, Frank Rocco, who is generous enough to give us a little bit of his time today here in the Fast Lane after, what was felt like a very quiet announcement about retiring after 20 seasons guiding the LCA football program. First of all, Coach Rocco, we appreciate your time today here in the Fast Lane. Thank you for joining us. Take us through when you came to the conclusion and when you realized the time was right.
Yeah, thank you, Ed, for having me on. We kind of do things, with little fanfare, I guess, at LCA, and I appreciate your willingness to, kind of have me on and explain, the timetable and everything that transpired. I think many people may know in 2024, I was diagnosed with a blood disorder, a cancer. And it in itself is not something that's going to kill me per se, but if I don't keep my levels regulated, that could lead to other very significant, issues. And so, I've been grinding through the last 2 years coaching and doing just fine. This year specifically, though, at the end of the school day, the work day, I was just wiped out, at the end, 2 o'clock, 2:30, and then having to go out to practice and muster energy, and, adrenaline would always kick in, and was able to kind of get through the season. But, at the end of the year, I just really felt like, there was going to be a time very shortly that either I was going to put myself in significant danger or I would not be myself and wouldn't be able to do things with the same passion and energy that I always did. And that would be unfair to the kids and to the program. So, I just felt like it was really best at this time to kind of step aside. We've got a great group of kids coming back, and whoever will take over after me, the cupboard certainly isn't bare, and we'll set them up for some success.
Frank Rocco with us here in the Fast Lane, the LCA Bulldogs head football coach. How much is it a testament to your assistant coaches, to the leaders on the team for the last couple of years, that as you were going through your health challenges and needing some energy, sure, you were able to bring the adrenaline that you noted, but also that it seems like you're not able to get through that also if you don't have a real solid core of leaders.
Yeah, we have a great coaching staff, and quite honestly, my prayer is that, and we've got a plan in place, but, most schools have to go through processes and things like that. We have a coach on our staff that I really feel is young and energetic and is a student of the game, and he can take it and run with it. And if that would happen, our entire staff would stay likely intact. Ed, Jake Grove is our offensive line coach. He's been with us now for 3 years, and Aaron Stam, who used to be a coach on Liberty University staff, was on our staff this year. My son Mike is our quarterbacks coach, and played at a very high level, and so it is a extremely quality coaching staff. And you're right. I mean, without those guys and other support people around us this year, I really wouldn't have been able to do it.
Frank Rocco with us in the Fast Lane, announcing yesterday with very little fanfare, and I think you probably wear that with a point of pride, the little fanfare announcement part, but announcing yesterday he's retiring as the head football coach for the LCA Bulldogs. The timing of it, it's in the early portion of January. How crucial is that? I know there are football players that do play other sports, but if you're not, or if you're even when you're doing it, you often are part of football conditioning and training in the offseason that begins in January. How crucial is the timing in this?
Yeah, extremely. Our athletic program is always, especially from the football perspective, I've always encouraged our kids to play multiple sports and, experience other things and be coached by other coaches and things like that. But there always is a contingent of guys that, they're not gifted in other sports and they're just football guys. So you need to kind of maintain that continuity and that conditioning throughout the course of the year. We've never been a program that's going to really go 365 days of just grinding. And, when you get to August, you're almost, worn out, so we've always kind of paced ourselves. But, the January, February, March timeframe, we would go 2 days a week. But just to kind of reconvene and getting the guys back together and keep them thinking football and doing football movements and exercises, it is very important to the overall foundation of what you try to do.
Frank Rocco with us in the Fast Lane. Frank, you mentioned things that are important and kind of looking at the transition from your being the head coach to where the direction goes with LCA football. How important was it for you? And I'm not trying to single out any one particular coach, but you had a great run with 2 years, 2 state championships, the last 2 years that Gideon Davidson and Easton Ware were there. And I've seen this so often in sports around at different high school sports, football, basketball, baseball, all across the board, where a generational talent or two leave and all of a sudden the coach leaves as well and the program almost has to rebuild. How important was it for you to be at LCA this past season so that there would be a leveling? Sure, there was going to be no Gideon Davidson, but you could help make sure this program was in a good spot without that.
You know what? I'm not blowing smoke, Ed, but you are right on it. You are right on it. I did feel like, after 1 year of kind of dealing with some health issues and doing what we did, and then honestly winning our second state championship in a row, that really could have been the time to jump off the train, but I just didn't feel like whoever would come in after, would maybe be in a position that they could really keep it going the way that would be necessary. And so, we weren't as talented this year, but our kids fought, and we won double-digit games again. Went to the state semifinals and had a tremendous year. Not to say that somebody else couldn't have done that. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that I knew that our younger classes were very formidable. We only had 10 seniors on our team this year. We've got 25 juniors and we've got 20-some sophomores. So those guys now, after getting through this year in the great maybe overachievement maybe that we did, now the 10th and the 11th graders now will come up, and that is a formidable group. And I just feel so much better about maybe someone coming in now and being able to take it and run with it and being in a very good situation.
Frank Rocco with us here in the Fast Lane discussing his retirement as the football coach at LCA after a very successful 20-year tenure. For me personally, the 19 playoffs in 20 seasons is the staggering stat. You averaged just under 10 wins a season. And, you look at all the challenges that go into that. We could rattle off stats all day. Is there a stat? Is there an accomplishment where you look back on your coaching tenure and go, wow, that's one that I'm really proud of?
Oh, man. Just recently, because of, retirement and, reminiscing, and we just had our banquet a couple weeks ago, you kind of start putting some thought into, obviously seasonal stats, but then you look over the history of the program, and we've done that recently. And it is, things that you don't even know that were accomplished until you actually sit down and look at them in the black and white. And yeah, there are, I mean, I don't want to over spiritualize things, but I mean, it's such a God thing, some of the things that have been accomplished here. And I can't take credit for it. Coaches, God has had his hand on our program. We've had great kids that are very coachable. We've had parents that allow us to coach their kids. I mean, yeah, certainly we're a Christian school and, we put God first, but it's not a little mamby-pamby church little program that we run. I mean, we are demanding, and, a lot of parents today don't let you be demanding on their little Johnny, and we're just so thankful that our parents have bought in to what we're selling, and we've had great success with it. The partnership between coaching staff and parents and players just buying in and doing what it is that we do in the program. And we've been so blessed. 85 of our players over those years have gone on to play college ball, and some of them in the NFL. And even today, even these recent years, we've had the largest number, like in a 2 or 3 year period, of kids going on and playing in high level Division I programs. So it has just been a blessing. But if you'd ask my wife, and in high school coaching, the 300 career wins is really the milestone. If you can get there, and I'm not going to get there. I'm at 294, and there are some people in my life that say, "Man, go, come on, you can do it one more year." But again, that would be the wrong motivation for coaching, and our kids deserve better than that. So I'm going to come short on that one milestone, but there's been so many great memories and accomplishments. It's just, too many to even name right now.
There are a lot of them, and Frank Rocco has been generous enough to weigh in on some of his fondest memories coaching, but also the decision, where things go from here, and everything that has gone on into his retirement after 20 years leading LCA Bulldogs football. Coach, thank you for your time in the fast lane. I guess we can still call you that even though you're retiring.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only thing I respond to. Thank you.
Indeed. Frank Rocco with us here in the fast lane. See, he's better than we are. I have to respond to a lot of things because unfortunately, when you're in my position, you get name called a lot. Frank, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. And all the best in retirement.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. God bless.
Indeed. Frank Rocco with us here in the fast lane. When we return, Ryan Lee previewing the NFL playoffs. He'll be on the call for the first game of our 6-game playoff slate tomorrow afternoon right here on VTRN Sports. He'll discuss that, plus the FCS Championship thriller, Montana State over Illinois State, and James Franklin. All that when we return here in the fast lane.
Mark Dalton here with Terry Volkswagen. Get ready to fall head over heels for the perfect VW SUV. One size doesn't fit all, though, and that's why Volkswagen has an SUV for everyone. From the compact and affordable Volkswagen Taos to the tech-packed Tiguan and the spacious Volkswagen Atlas. No matter which one fits your lifestyle, you'll love the comfort, performance, and safety. Stop by Terry Volkswagen on Forest Road in Lynchburg or check us out online at terryvw.com. Terry Volkswagen. You'll love our cars.
When shopping for auto liability insurance, it's wise to consider the best policy, not the cheapest. Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. It's crucial to have more than the minimum insurance on your auto liability policy. This protects you if you injure someone or if someone without proper insurance hurts you. Having the right policy ensures you have sufficient underinsured coverage to take care of you and your family. To learn more how we can help you navigate these challenges, visit us at trostlaw.com. That's trostlaw.com.
Hi, I'm Chuck from Aquatrack Adventures in Salem. The Virginia Talk Radio Network and InsaneRadioDeals.com have helped our company grow by sharing our company's message throughout Central and Southside Virginia. The gift cards and experiences sold on InsaneRadioDeals.com have brought us many new customers. If you're a business that wants to grow with a message that resonates and gets results, I highly recommend InsaneRadioDeals.com and the Virginia Talk Radio Network. Simply put, it works.
New year can mean new changes in your life, but you know what will never change? The great deals that you get on InsaneRadioDeals.com. And we don't just feed your taste buds, but we feed your adventurous side, your hobbies, your interests, with great rates on Rise Up Climbing Passes, Aquatrek Adventures, and Cross-White Athletics Club. Or if you're a sports nerd like me, we've got gift certificates for a SeaOfRed.com and BNC Sports located at River Ridge Mall. All this and more at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
A slew of games coming up this weekend. VTRN Sports Facebook page or Fastlane Ed Lane and TJ_Wilkerson8. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram to keep up with how you can find out what games we will be covering throughout the weekend. But the easiest way to remember it is just this. We'll have some Virginia Tech basketball. And then, more importantly, we will have the NFL playoffs, including the kickoff game of that you'll be hearing 4:30 kickoff, 4 o'clock airtime, with the man who is generous enough to join us now. Can we say safely from Charlotte, Ryan Leaf, Westwood One analyst, who's with us in the Fast Lane?
Safely from Charlotte, yes.
Awesome. That is wonderful. Prayers answered. And I hope indeed that it is not as sleety, rainy, miserable as it is where we are in Virginia.
It's probably going to be pretty wet tomorrow. It's going to be warm, but it's going to be wet. So, that's exactly the type of game that Carolina played in the final week of season against the Buccaneers. And Bryce Young actually played pretty well in that. So that may be an advantage Panthers, home field advantage for that case.
You referenced the weather potentially being an advantage. Obviously, they play on grass, although I know this is not Soldier Field, whatever you call the stadium in Washington, where the grass has been bad. Most of these other outlets have pretty good drainage systems. But does all of the weather factor and then the travel as well, does that give Carolina enough of an edge to at least keep this game competitive, with the Rams also looking for a little bit of revenge in addition to their playoff push?
Yeah, I mean, they beat them a couple of weeks ago, so they have that going for them. They've looked at this team in the eye. In fact, at the time, the Rams were just coming off that win against Seattle and looked like the team to beat in the NFC. So, it really took their season in a different direction. And weather was the reason why the Rams weren't hosting the NFC Championship game last year. If it doesn't snow in that game, probably in Philadelphia, I think the Rams end up winning that football game and going on to the Super Bowl themselves. So, this is a real neat opportunity. It's the first playoff game to kick off the weekend. People are looking for what this league is going to present this year without the Chiefs being involved. Who is going to be the team that steps up? No Lamar Jackson, no Joe Burrow. Is it the Buffalo Bills? Is it the veteran leadership in Philadelphia? Is it the veteran leadership in Los Angeles? I think there's a lot of questions to be answered going into this playoffs.
Ryan D. Leaf on Twitter and Instagram are ways you can keep up with Ryan Leaf. You'll also be able to just listen to him. Saturday, VTRN Sports, 4:30 kickoff. Rams at the Carolina Panthers, 10.5. Seems like a pretty steep spread for this matchup, but the Rams have looked really good, and there is the revenge angle and a lot of turnovers in that first slippery, wet matchup. Does Carolina keep this close? Do you think the Rams come out with a different level of focus as a team many view as one of the Super Bowl favorites?
I mean, that is a very big number for the playoffs. You're talking about a division champion. These games haven't gone the way a lot of people think they have. I think there's been 8 of them in which a higher seeded but worse record team hosted a better record team that didn't win their division. In 6 out of the 8 games, the division winner and the home team won. And I think back to the game in Seattle, the Marshawn Lynch earthquake game against the New Orleans Saints, who was just, Drew Brees, such a better team, and that Seattle Seahawks team found a way to win. And that's the kind of thing that Carolina's hoping for. I think the fan base is going to be rabid, getting to the playoffs for the first time in some time. So, and another thing that Carolina does is they play the least amount of man coverage in the NFL. They flat out play zone. They make you take the intermediate and short pass. I think they're the third best team in all of football in allowing passes 20-plus yards down the field. So they're going to keep everything in front of them, rally, make tackles, and make you make those throws down the field. And, they're going to, Matthew Stafford likes to take shots. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams being back, is he going to be patient enough in this offense to do that? That's the hope of Carolina, and that's why I think it will probably be a closer game than a lot of people expect.
Your evaluation, well, I'll give you the blank evaluation. You've obviously got knowledge of the quarterback position. You played it. You're an analyst now, and you're on the call for the Rams and Panthers, 4:30 p.m. this Saturday right here on VTRN Sports. Bryce Young, what's your analysis of the improvement that he's made in his ability? I don't know if you want to put the full game on his shoulders tomorrow, but being able to keep Carolina in this without mistakes and timely plays when needed.
Well, I think he just keeps doing what he's doing. I thought he's had a pretty good year. They really used the running game of Dowdle and rallied off the defenses. 7 of their 8 wins this year have been in one possession game. There's a game management aspect to what Dave Canales is doing here in year 2. And he's asking Bryce Young to come along with that ride. And it doesn't necessarily look flashy. And they didn't win a lot of games that a lot of people, wanted them to win against playoff caliber teams this year. Ironically, some weird ones, games against the likes of the Packers and the Rams, 2 teams that were really expected to do well this year and are both playoff teams. So, I think that what Bryce Young has done is good enough and to get to the playoffs. And that's an important facet to this. And he's just got to continue to get better. And I think he is. I really do. There's games in which I think he's in heavily amount of control of what he's doing out there. And like anything else, you look around the league and, quarterbacks are up and down when they're playing against the likes of some of these defenses in this league. And Bryce Young's done a good job of, I think, balancing that act and playing well when he needed to.
Ryan Leaf with us here in the Fast Lane at Ryan D. Leaf. Twitter and Instagram to keep up with him. And, of course, Saturday, 4:30 p.m., VTRN Sports as he's on the call for the Rams and the Carolina Panthers. The rest of the NFL playoffs, the prevailing sentiment is, unlike last year where you felt like there were a couple of real dominant teams and Philadelphia proved to be the best out of that bunch, winning the Super Bowl against Mahomes, Reed, and Kansas City. People are viewing this as wide open a playoffs as we have seen. Are you on board with that sentiment?
I am. I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't be. They're not the usual suspects. It's quite wide open. The 1 seeds are 2 teams that I don't think anybody expected to be the 1 seeds. The Bears being the 2 seed. I don't think anybody expected that. So there are a lot of that going on until it's proven differently. Until you're telling me that Drake May in his first playoffs, that Bo Nix in his second year, and Sam Darnold as a playoff guy. If you're telling me those guys are going to one up the experience of Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford in these playoffs, until that happens, I'm going to say you're wrong. I have to be proven wrong in this instance. So can Trevor Lawrence and the Jags in their first real dominant year as a division champion, can they overtake that experience of the Bills, who couldn't win the division this year? Can Carolina do something that to the Rams, who have just won a Super Bowl a few years ago, have played really good football down the stretch, and the Philadelphia Eagles, who have been as dominant as any team in the playoffs, especially at home? So until any team can come and do something to disrupt that, I'm apt to think that this postseason is based in the Bills, Eagles, and Rams right now. If you're looking at the teams that I think can get to the Super Bowl, could be completely blown out of the water because Drake May's been so good this year, because Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, and more importantly, the Houston Texans and that defense is playing so well. There are so many different options. The 2 teams that I would probably tell you that don't have a chance to win the Super Bowl this year are the Carolina Panthers and the Los Angeles Chargers. Those are the only 2 teams out of the 14 that are currently entered into the playoffs that I don't think that have a chance to win the Super Bowl.
So you put your category, you got 2, Chargers and Panthers that will not win. You've got 3 that you really trust with experience: Rams, Eagles, and Bills. Of that tier of the remaining teams that are in between, which one do you like the most and why?
I probably like the Houston Texans simply because of that defense. The defense is so good. They get after the quarterback with 4 guys. They play coverage in the back, get turnovers, and then their quarterback has figured out that he doesn't have to be the star. As long as he doesn't turn it over, they can win these football games. I think Houston may be the sexy pick in all of this because of that defense and what D'Amico Ryans has been able to do. So it's tough going to Pittsburgh. It's tough going outside in the cold. They're used to playing indoors and everything like that. They've made it to the divisional round the last 2 years. And for them to keep continuing going, they're going to have to do that again to get over the top as the 5 seed. They would most likely, then have to go to, the 2 seed, depending on what Buffalo does with the Jags. And you're looking at, a situation where Houston's playing in the AFC Championship if you're not careful. So I like Houston. I think the defense and the caliber of quarterback play over the last few weeks, I think is a difference maker in the AFC. On the NFC side of it, I just like the Rams. I think that they, I would have argued they were the best team, and somehow, that punt return in Seattle changed the dynamics of everything completely. And they lose that game. They lose to Atlanta, and then they have to settle for the seed that they are. I think they actually lucked out getting the 5 seed, getting to go to Carolina in the first round instead of falling back and having to go to Philly like San Francisco did, or even having to go to Chicago to play these games. So I like the Rams on the NFC side of it. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was Rams, Texans for the Super Bowl this year.
You know of Ryan Leaf because of his analyst work, including Westwood One that you heard in the FCS championship game Monday night. And then you'll hear this Saturday, 4:30 p.m. kickoff for the Rams-Panthers in the NFL broadcast. The greatest credential, of course, is being 13 years sober and a mental health and substance use disorder advocate on behalf, including with the Moninger Clinic. Ryan, we always love pointing that out. We're grateful for your time today here in the Fast Lane. You were on the call for this past Monday's FCS championship game. Did you notice, and have you noticed, I know when we've spoken before, the purity of 1AA FCS football. Have you noticed, and do you believe that type of championship, first time in over 4 decades for Montana State to win a championship, that will hold a different level of bond for those players than what we will see for the remaining 3 teams or at any point in the bigger revenue generating championships in 1A FBS football?
Yeah, definitely. I just don't like the product at the FBS level. I think when the realignment happened a few years back, it just started to affect what football is. And I just don't think you can compartmentalize what it is to what you see as the product on the field. I didn't even watch the game last night. I'm not going to watch the game tonight. I don't really have any interest. I think the best college football game anybody was going to see, frankly, was the one on Monday night between Montana State and Illinois State. And it was a doozy. It was fun to call, great to be a part of. My father's a Montana State alum. I grew up watching the Bobcats. So it was kind of cool to call that game. Being professional, but ultimately at the end, seeing 41 years of when I was 8 years old and my dad taking me to those games in 1984 when they won a national championship, to see it happen again. Pretty cool.
More emotional for you or for Dad?
For Dad, me, I'm not a Bobcat. I got turned on to football that year when I was 8. About being the Bobcats. My dad's a grad. He's pretty psyched about it. He was more psyched about the semifinal. He went to the semifinal game in Bozeman against their hated rival, the Grizzlies, and where they hung 48 on them. So I think he was probably pretty psyched about that more than even the national championship.
It is really cool, and it's neat to see that level of football. There were a number of teams, including some in our backyard. I know you called JMU's game against Washington State earlier this year. You've also been around and seen others. We cover Liberty. We cover Old Dominion as well. Do you see an era where either those type of programs would be more embracing of a partnership like what we've got at 1AA FCS football and wanting to go there, or is the lure and temptation of money too great, at least until there might be some kind of breakaway in the future?
Well, I think it's going to be decided for them. I think there'll be a National Collegiate Football League where there's anywhere from 18 to 22 teams in 2 conferences that ultimately are at the highest level. They'll break off from the NCAA. There'll be a commissioner of that who will, and then in that sense, it's kind of privatized. It will be reined in terms of what NIL and what the transfer portal will look like. And then everybody else will go back to the NCAA. And I think you just go with the FCS model. You put together all those teams and make it even as possible and go back to work. And so eventually that's going to happen. It's just too much money to be made and too many teams that are blue bloods that don't want to see anything from the likes of Tulane's or the JMU's playing in a tournament like this.
Do you then foresee, and we'll wrap it up on this, a scenario where the non-blue bloods who are not part of that category, it almost looks different than what it is now, and revenue and paying players is just not nearly the same as even it is now?
No, you're not putting the snakes back in that can. That's you're gonna have that for the end of days, plain and simple. You opened up that door, and it's going to be walked through every single time. If you can make money at your peak of earning potential, the player's gonna, and the teams that are, no matter what level you're at, you're going to fund it in a way that makes you the most competitive, however you do it. That's just frankly how it's going to be, and that's what the NCAA signed up for when they chose to just let the Wild Wild West begin. So until anybody comes in with some regulation, which I don't know how you do now, because like I said, snakes are out of that can. That's just the way it looks, and you're not going to put them back in. Once people have got the taste of making money to play college football, that's over with.
The snakes analogy, that might be the best one, Ryan.
Yeah, snakes in the can, man. Remember that old game? You would just pop that can and those snakes come flying out of there, and they ain't going back in. I'll tell you that much.
No, they are not. Meanwhile, Ryan Leaf, generous enough to give us time today in the fast lane. You heard him Monday night for the FCS championship, the thriller between Montana State and Illinois State. You'll hear him this Saturday in the NFL playoff kickoff game that we have for our weekend of football coverage right here on VTR in Sports. But most notably, mental health and substance use disorder advocate, working on behalf and partnering up with and advocating for the Meninger Clinic as well. And he's at Ryan D. Leaf on Twitter and Instagram. Ryan, thank you so much for your time today in the fast lane. We always appreciated prayers for travel and safety, and especially for your goal of 2026 being a positive one and not letting 2025 get to you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Indeed. Ryan Leaf with us here in the fast lane. Grateful to have him with us today in the fast lane, and a great way to wrap things up. Meanwhile, we do that. We'll get ready to send it over for a little bit of Freddie and Harry, and then we will have the college football playoff semifinal number 2. Ryan doesn't want to watch. He could always listen on the VTR and Sports app, which you can do as well, or Fast Lane Ed Lane, where you listen at W227BG Timberlake, WVGMA Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville, Southside. For TJ, I'm Ed. We're back Monday afternoon at 5.
And especially early on, I did post some cringy things, but you kind of got to be okay with that. I've been at it now for probably